What's up, guys? Welcome to another speed build. I hope you are all having a wonderful day. Today we are over in Oasis Springs and I am building a Mediterranean style house using only the base game. Honestly, it has been a few months since I have even built in Oasis Springs, and so I really wanted to take some time to build here again, and I figured why not take this opportunity to go ahead and build using only the base game. And so at first you might notice like for the columns, for example, I did pull out the ones from Get Together because at very first I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to use just the base game, but the further I went into the build, I'm like, yeah, I'm basically using only base game, so let's go ahead and run with it. And so I do replace those Get Together columns with some base game columns. As for the Sims that live in this house, as I was building, I imagined that it is a husband and wife, and they recently had a baby not too long ago, and that baby is now a toddler, and they also have their teen nephew that lives here with them. He recently got into a really big argument with his parents at his house. So after that altercation, he left his house and he came right over to his aunt and uncle's house. He has been really close with them his whole life. He pretty much views them as his second parents. Back when he was an infant, his parents used to live with his aunt and uncle, and then they ended up moving out when he was pretty much a toddler getting into his childhood years. And so it's been a while since he's lived here, but he remained super close with his aunt and uncle. And so they're pretty much his go-to adults when he has any sort of issue. He's never really gotten along with his parents too much. His parents are not very understanding of him and his needs. They just think he's a rebellious teenager that is doing anything to rebel against his parents, and his parents are seeing no wrong in what they're doing. This teenager is actually not that bad of a kid. Like, he isn't too good in school at the moment, but he hasn't had the best upbringing. His parents has moved around from his grandparents' house to his aunt and uncle's house to a friend of his parents' house until finally they're living on their own. And so he hasn't had any constant place growing up, which it's a pretty known thing that children really need stability when they're growing up. It really takes a toll on them mentally if they don't have a stable place to call home. And so that's kind of what's going on with him, and he is rebelling, but he's doing normal teenager things, like he's skipping class. He might skip school altogether. He sneaks out at night. He actually got caught stealing some stuff from the local convenience store, just like some candy bars and sodas and stuff like that. Nothing too serious, but he did get in a little bit of trouble for that, and so his parents are pretty much just over him in general, which sounds so bad, but luckily he has his aunt and uncle that is willing to take him in. And so after that fight, he came right over here and explained to them what happened, and of course they were I was going to say they were super shocked, but I guess they weren't totally shocked. They kind of not really seen it coming, but it makes sense because they know the history with his parents and himself. So it really wasn't a total shocker. So once he got there, he asked if he could move in. And they said, okay, well, we are going to have to talk with your parents first, of course. So they called his parents and they let his parents know that he is actually over at their house so that they don't have to worry. Then they continued to explain, the situation and how distraught he was and how he is asking to move in temporarily at first, not really necessarily permanently. And his parents said, you know what, if you want to deal with him, go ahead. And then they hung up the phone. So his parents really aren't the best parents to him, to be totally honest. So it's really the best case scenario for him to move in with his aunt and uncle. So when it was decided that he is actually going to move in, they only had a 2-bedroom house. And so of course they have the master bedroom, and then their toddler has the other spare bedroom, and so they had no other bedroom. So what they ended up doing was renovating the garage into a bedroom for their nephew, and it actually turned out to be a pretty cool room. Like, he is so happy with it and so excited. He had so much fun decorating his new room, and of course there were rules when he moved in. His aunt and uncle said, you have got to start taking school way more seriously. We want you to do good in life. And so of course we are going to be a little bit harder on you than your parents were, but that is going to be for your own good and not us just trying to be mean and boss you around. He was super understanding and super thankful for his aunt and uncle to even be willing to take him in. So he is willing to do anything that they ask. And really the only rules were that he has to do better in school. He needs to find better friends that are not going to peer pressure him into doing stupid things like stealing a candy bar. I mean, I'll give you the $2 for the candy bar. You don't have to steal it. So those really basically were the only rules. They just want him to do better in school. So now that he has lived here for a couple of months, he is actually starting to pick up his grades. He met new friends. He is no longer stealing candy bars and sodas. And so they are very, very happy with how much he has changed in just a short period of time. This is like a new beginning for him, and he, as well as his aunt and uncle, cannot be more excited for his future. So that is pretty much the main part of the story for this family. There's really not much else to add, but I am going to talk about their careers and their interests and a little bit about the teens' interests, and pretty much that's about it. It's a very short story today, but I thought it was a pretty cute storyline. And it's different than any other storyline I've come up with before in the past, and I feel like it's also pretty realistic. Like, this story is a pretty common story that happens in real life. As we get inside, I will talk more about the Sims' interests and hobbies and their careers and things like that. But for right now, I do want to talk a little bit about the exterior of the house. So going into this build, I knew two things. I knew I wanted it to be Mediterranean style. Since this is Oasis Springs, I just love a Mediterranean style house in Oasis Springs. It just matches perfectly. And the second thing I knew is that I really wanted to use that like half circular window above the front door. I love the way that looks. It reminds me of the 2-story windows from The Sims 2. I really wish they had that sort of thing in The Sims 4, but I guess at the end of the day, we don't really need the ones from The Sims 2 in The Sims 4, since we can kind of recreate that ourselves. The only difference is that the window portion actually goes on the second story and the first story at the same time. And doing it on The Sims 4, you kind of have that floor/ceiling in between, and you kind of have to finesse it a little bit to get it to work how you want it to work. But The Sims 2, I felt like it was a feature that was built into the game. It was a little bit easier to achieve than it is here in The Sims 4, but at the end of the day, you can achieve the same look. You just have to kind of mess around and play around with it a little bit. It still won't be exactly the same like The Sims 2, because if you try to put a window in between the first and second story and that floor is there, even if you remove the floor, it messes up the window, and it kind of makes the window, like, you can't see through the window. Like, the actual glass portion of the window is gone, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really not exactly the same as it is in The Sims 2, and I like the way it's done in The Sims 2 a little bit better. Sometimes I need it in between both stories and not just on one or the other. And so if you're doing it in The Sims 4, you have to have it on one or the other. So my favorite thing to do to achieve that sort of look is by putting the front door on the bottom and then putting that circular half window up on top. And if you adjust the platforms in a specific way, then you can make them actually touch each other and look like one piece. And you can do the same thing by placing windows on the bottom and windows on the top and kind of placing them in a way where the bottom of the second story window touches the top of the first story window. But like I said, my favorite way to achieve that look is by adding the front door directly under the half circular window. I think it looks so pretty like that and like elegant. And of course, anytime that I do that, I always cut out the ceiling to have like an extra tall entryway, and so that you can see the door and window not only on the outside but on the inside as well. And then I add like chandeliers at the top, and the staircase I usually add there, and that's what I did here, and I think it turns out so good every single time. I am pretty curious about how you guys feel about it though. Is that something that you really like the look of too? Or am I kind of the only one? Am I the only one that likes it? I am not 100% sure. I think it looks good, but I am curious about how you guys view it. So let me know down below. And also, if that is something that you guys are interested in seeing like a tutorial for, or seeing a tutorial about building a house in general, let me know. I did one previously when I first started my channel, but it really, honestly, I could probably do a better one now. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely let me know. It's something that I am willing to look into, and I think it'd be kind of fun to do. So as for the rest of the exterior of the house, we pretty much have it all together, and I'm just placing some landscaping pieces. The landscaping I had a little bit of a hard time doing on this build, and I'm not really sure why. Landscaping is usually something that like just comes super easy for me in a build, but like I said, this build was a little bit hard for me to do landscaping wise. I was just super indecisive of what I wanted to do. And I mean, I think the landscaping turned out okay, but there's something like off about this part of the house in general. Maybe it's like the front porch that's throwing me off a little bit, and I used the pink tile. Since this is Mediterranean, I feel like the pink tile just makes sense. And it matches the roof. I don't know, there's something that as I was building in real time, I was currently looking at the outside of the house in the front, and I'm like, there's something off about it. Like, I like the way that the shape is, and like the window and the front door. And by the way, that front door fits perfectly under that window. It's almost like it was made for that window. But anyways, as far as the landscaping, I don't know, there's something off about it. I did put some planter boxes on each side of the staircase with some of those like marigold flower bushes. I think that's what they're supposed to be. I used the yellow one since I used the big bushy circular yellow bushes. I wanted to keep the yellow theme going on, and I did yellow flower boxes too. So I just wanted to keep yellow all around. Maybe white would have been a little bit better, but I wanted to add some sort of color. But yeah, just something off about the front of the house. I never really could figure it out. I decided just to leave it how it was and call it a day. I think it looks okay. It's not really like the best, but it looks fine. And I also added a side door to this house, which is not something I do in every single build. I do it if I think about it, but I really do love adding a side door, especially if I have a garage. I usually add the side door in the garage, and that is actually where the teen's room is. So he has his own like entryway in and out of the house, and that's like every teenager's dream. So of course he loves it here. You know, he has stability, he has a new cool room that he can call his own, and he can decorate it however he wants. He has his own door that he can leave in and out of, and you know, technically his aunt and uncle probably shouldn't trust him with his own door, but they do, and he is actually not sneaking out. He is doing exactly what they're asking him to do, and he's being really, really good and really, really responsible, and it really feels good for him. This is like a change for him that he's never had before, and he could not be more excited about his future and everything that there is to come. So we are now arranging the backyard, and I'm putting some furnishings out here. It's not going to be completely done until the very end of the build, but while I'm back here, I figured why not go ahead and add some stuff that I know I'm going to want to have back here. I do have some monkey bars. Obviously we don't have a child in the house yet, but they're gonna have a toddler grow up into a child sooner than later, and so they went ahead and got some monkey bars for when their child ages up. And of course we have a seating area in the backyard with a grill and of course a pool. No build of mine would be complete without a pool. I think I had a pool in almost every single one of my builds. I just love the way pools look in The Sims in real life. I love the fact that it gives a good entertainment space for the family and any of their guests that come over, and quite frankly, I would love a pool in real life, and so I'm living out my pool fantasies here in The Sims, and so I always have to add one in the backyard. It never fails. I will randomly, sometimes, very rarely, build a house with no pool in the back, but that is very, very slim. Most of the time it's in like a house with a huge garden, or maybe a house in a neighborhood that has like a lot of mountains and stuff. I might not be able to fit a pool. Maybe a beach house in Sulani. You don't need a pool there, you're on a beach. And so things like that, I won't add a pool. But for the most part, if I'm doing like a suburban house, I'm always adding a pool. I probably do too much, but it is what it is. So we are now inside of the house and we are furnishing the inside, and I almost went with this red/pinkish tile because it's Mediterranean style, and I usually love to add that in my Mediterranean style houses. But the more I build in this house, the more the time goes on and I'm looking at it, I kind of hate the way that it looks in this house. It kind of doesn't fit the inside, and so I end up changing that tile from the pinkish reddish to a white tile. I just think it brings it all together, and it looks a lot better in this house since I have a lot of like white detail going on. The white tile looks 100 times better. So we have an open floor plan in this house, and I love how open it is in here. You have the dining room right off of the kitchen and the living room there as well. And I decided to add the love seat right by where the dining table is. I feel like it gives the room a little bit of a division. Plus, I really didn't want to add the love seat right in front of those really tall windows. I just hate the way it looks when a window is being covered. I can't stand it. I will avoid it as much as I can. Obviously, sometimes you can't really avoid it and it is what it is, but in this case I could, and honestly it looked a lot better with having that division there from the love seat. I of course had to add a fireplace in this house too. That's another thing that I always add. Not only do I always add pools, I always add fireplaces. I love the way that like a lit fireplace feels in a room. It just feels so cozy. And then seeing the smoke come out of the chimney, I love the way it looks in The Sims. I think it looks so good, so I always add chimneys if I can. And fireplaces, of course. If I add a chimney, I'm going to add a fireplace. I cannot add a chimney and not a fireplace because that just makes absolutely no sense to me. And my builds have to make sense. That is like the ultimate goal, is that it has to make sense and it has to flow. And then of course it has to look good. And this particular build I was trying so hard to make look good, and there were just so many things that were throwing me off. And one of those things was the flooring. I was trying to make the dark flooring work with this like the tile, the red pink tile, and it wasn't working. I just could not make it work. Sometimes I can, but since I have a lot of white trim on this house, I think that's why it just was not working. So I decided to go with a light wood instead, and then I changed the counters from the dark to the light. The table, I almost did like a dark table, but I decided to do the glass table instead and the glass coffee table, and it all kind of is going together a lot better than I originally had it. And I do change the tiles still, so don't worry. You're probably looking at it like, Kristen, what are you thinking? That does not look good. So yeah, don't worry, I do change it. And I have a lot of white going on in this build. That is super dangerous with having a toddler, but in The Sims, the toddlers don't make messes like they do in real life, so it's fine. And they also don't have pets in this house either, so that helps a lot. I'm finally at a place where I'm getting happy with the way that this build is coming along. It took me a little bit at first, but I'm finally getting it to that point that I like. So as far as the walls go, I cannot stand using just pure paint on walls without any sort of trim. At least in The Sims. In real life, it's not so bad, but in The Sims, it just goes from wall to floor with no detail in between, and I kind of can't stand the way that it looks. And when I use the platforms like I'm doing here, it makes it nearly impossible to use the wallpaper with the trim at the bottom, because if you're familiar with the platforms, then you probably know that if you make the platforms go up a couple of notches and then you try to use the wallpaper that has the skinny trim at the bottom, then you don't see the trim. I guess they didn't make it to where the wallpaper adjusts with the floor if you're using the platforms, and so the trim is literally at the bottom, but since you use the platform to go up a couple of notches, you don't see it. And that is my biggest pet peeve when it comes to using the platforms. And so what I ended up doing here was using the wallpaper that had like this super large border at the bottom. I don't even think it's considered trim at that point. I think it's like wall border. I don't know really what it's called, but it's super long. If you're using the short wall height, half of the wall is that white border. And I used it here, so it's a little bit of a thick trim at the bottom, which isn't necessarily ideal, but I thought it was better than having just pure paint and then the floor. It gave a little bit of extra detail. So like I said, it's not ideal, but at the end of the day, it was a lot better than using just the wallpaper that was pure paint. And then you'll notice, in the garage, for instance, it's renovated to the teens room, so I did use that same wallpaper in there, and you'll see that larger white border. So you kind of see the difference of what I'm talking about. You don't see that largeness as much in the living room since I am using the platforms, and it actually is perfect in the entryway of the house. It looks like just the regular trim, but then I made a step down into the hallway that leads to the living area and the dining area. And so yeah, the trims are all different in this house, and you'll notice that, but I prefer that over just paint at the end of the day. So you kind of there's pros and cons, and you have to choose between the pros and cons and what you prefer more. But that's enough about the trim. I could probably go on because I'm good about doing that, but I will spare you guys and I'll move on. So we pretty much have the living room, dining room, and kitchen done. I still do need to update the flooring from the pink to the white. And here in the entryway, I change it from the tile just to the regular wood, and it makes it look so much better, 10 times better. So we don't have an office in this house, so I ended up adding a computer desk right in the entryway. It was kind of the only place I could find to put it, but I thought it looked pretty good. And that is actually where Dad works from home at. If he does work from home, he pretty much goes to the office for the most part, but sometimes you might not feel too good some days, or whatever the case may be. If he works from the house, that is where he works. And you're probably wondering what his career is, and he is just an investor at the local business firm in Oasis Springs. It's nothing too exciting or fun or anything like that, but he does make some pretty good money as an investor, and it's something he loves to do and is super interested in. He has always really loved numbers and of course money. Who doesn't love money? And so it's right up his alley. It's perfect for him, and he's excelling at it pretty well. And he actually got into it from his dad. His dad was a business owner and an investor, and so it's kind of like a family business. Actually, since his nephew has moved in, he has shown a little bit of interest in becoming an investor once he's older as well. And so he's working and showing his nephew all of the tips and tricks about investing. And so that's pretty exciting for his nephew. He's really looking forward into doing that. And he knows if he's able to get into it sooner than later, then he has a pretty good head start in that specific profession. And as far as the mom goes, she is actually in the painter career. She has loved painting literally her whole life ever since she was a child. She began just drawing and doodling on her little creativity board, and that is when she fell in love with painting. And as a teenager, she really developed her painting skill. And now as an adult, she is actually a professional painter, and she sells her paintings for really, really good money. So between her paintings and his investments, this family is honestly really, really well off. And they also decided to wait to have a family until they developed their career. And so that was really honestly a really good decision. Now they're really able to provide for their kids and now their nephew and any other future kids that they may have. I am currently working on the toddler's room, and I went back and forth on the theme that I wanted this toddler's room to be. I knew I wanted to stick with like a green color. I thought green looked really good with the rest of the house. The rest of the house is like a very, very neutral theme. There's a lot of beige going on. There's a little bit of green going on in the living room because of the couch. And so I just wanted to stick with green up here too. And this is base game only, so you know, we have a very small selection of things to choose from as far as the theme goes. So I chose this wallpaper that has like grass at the bottom and like some butterflies flying on the top. And I think it's super cute and like perfect for a toddler's room. And then the toddler bed that I chose has like the green vines growing on it. It's super cute. And really it's gender neutral. And at first I thought maybe they would have a son, but now that I'm looking at it, maybe it kind of goes more for like a little girl. But like I said, it's very gender neutral. So whatever you choose, if you download this, you could totally choose whichever gender you wanted. As for the hallway up here where the staircase is and you can overlook onto the bottom story, I love this area. It is so pretty, and you can really see the door and the window combination. It just looks so good, and I'm so glad that I went with the lighter wood with the white trim walls and the beige. It just really looks very, very cohesive with each other. And I struggled with what I wanted to add in that hallway because it's super large, and so I decided just to put like a circular rug. It fit perfectly there. And why not add a chess table? You always need a chess table in every build, I feel like, because almost every career I feel like you have to level up the logic skill, if I'm not mistaken. So I ended up adding a chess table, and then outside on the balcony is where the mom's easel is. That's where she chooses to paint. She really gets super creative and inspired out there on her balcony overlooking Oasis Springs. We are now finally working on the teens room, and like I said, this used to be the garage, but once they decided he was going to come move in and live with them, he really needed a stable place to stay to call his own room instead of just like sleeping on the couch. And so they renovated the garage into his bedroom, and they kept the side door. They decided, you know what? You are a teenager, and now that you will be graduating not long from now, you really deserve your privacy, and we will let you keep your privacy as long as you follow the few rules that we have for you. And part of that privacy is having his own door, so he can kind of come and go as he pleases. Like I said, as long as he sticks to the rules that they gave him. Honestly, I feel like a room like this is like every teenager's dream. I would have absolutely loved to have a room that used to be the garage and it was recently renovated, and then you even had your own door leading to the outside where you can come and go as you please. That would be like literally a dream. You know what? I wouldn't trust my teenager in a room like that, so I understand why most parents would never do this. But, you know, this is The Sims, so we can pretend here. So as far as his hobbies, he is like any normal teenage boy. Like, he loves his video games and he also loves to work out. So I add a computer in here, I have a PlayStation under the TV, and I also end up adding like a workout machine. So it's safe to say that he spends most of his time in his room. He's either doing his schoolwork or he's playing his video games with his friends, has his friends over, he works out. The only time he really leaves his room is when he needs to eat something or go to the bathroom. A kitchen and the bathroom literally are the only things he does not have in this room. And he actually has had a job since he lived with his parents, and that did not change when he moved in over here. Obviously, his aunt and uncle, they do not make him pay rent, but he wanted to keep his career so that he had some extra money going. I'm calling it a career, it's really just a part-time job as a manual labor on the weekends, and that's about it. But it keeps him active and it gives him some extra money in his pocket, and so he calls it a win-win situation. But we have reached the end of today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's speed build. Like I said, the landscaping isn't the best I've done. I'm not completely happy with the way that the landscaping turned out, but I really hope you guys like it. Of course, if you did find today's video enjoyable, then please leave a like. It helps me know that you enjoy base game builds just like this one, and also subscribe if you have not already. And comment down below what your favorite part of today's build is. I love to hear from you guys. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!